Hi. Shooting in hard light outside, the main problems are the shadows become very heavy in the eye sockets right underneath here. You'll see dark spots. And the way to fix that is to have the subject face lifted upwards towards the sky so that the light shines there and it becomes whiter, not so dark. As you can see, here is the darkness. And if you lift your eye up towards the light source or the sky, then it becomes white. See the difference? The darkness versus upwards, and there's light now. The other problem with shooting in the hard light is shadows and hot spots all over your face and body. The subject will also squint when facing the sun. So the way to solve that is to simply get the subject into shade. And the way to know where the shade is if there's shade on the ground, have the person stand in that spot, because if there's shade on the ground, there will be shade on them when you're taking their picture. The best spots to find shade are underneath trees, of course, but you could also find shade right next to walls if there's an overhang. You could also find shade in arches and stuff, like porches. And the thing with that is you want to make sure that the subject is as close to the light as possible, but still standing in a shaded area so that therefore they're not too dark underneath the canopy of, of the overhanging. Because if it's too far away from the edge of the light source, they become too dark. And that also becomes a problem. What if there is no shade at all, which is very unlikely, but could happen? If that is the case, then you have the option of what they call backlighting. That is where you place the subject so the shadow of their head is in the hot spot on the ground, and their hair will then be glowing from behind. And backlighting is where the subject has their back to the light and the sun is shining behind them so that is the hair is with a light shining through it. It can look quite nice, but it's very tricky because a lot of times you expose for the brightness and the subject becomes nothing more than a shadow and you can't see any of their features very well. To avoid that, you need to do what they call shoot into darkness. That is basically where you place the subject so their back is to a darker background, such as trees. It could be hedge. It could be even a dark colored building. Anything that's darker, so that they are exposed for, and the darkness of the background becomes darker, but that's not a problem because you want to expose for your subject anyway. And you don't really care if the subject becomes pure black. That's preferable than having just a silhouette. And most times, the background will get darker and won't go completely black. So the trick to it is to shoot with the sun behind them and also look at the ground, and where there is a hot spot, have it so that their head is shining in that spot on the ground. Their shadow of their head is shining in that spot in the ground, and then that will make sure that they have their hair backlit. Okay, so when they're backlit, have the lens pointed towards the shaded background. So the model itself is the brightest part in the photo, and then expose for the bright spot on the model's face. So that way the face is properly exposed. And if anything else has to get blown out, it will be the clothing of the model and not the face. And even better, the background will be darker so that the eyes are drawn towards the face, the brightest part of the photo. And that's just the way how it is. We are naturally drawn towards the brightest spot in photos. So to make sure that the model's face is the brightest spot. Hi. If you have flash, I mean, you should also use it when you're backlighting. The best one is, of course, to have off camera flash, but let's face it, most of us don't carry around flashes with us when we're out and about. And so we should use our um, on camera flash, the kind that you just pop up the lid and set it for a minimum output. And then that way it won't be too bright. It won't look like a deer caught in the headlights. And if it's too intense, the light, you could always back off from your subject so that you're further away. And the further away you are, the less intense the output of the flash will be on the subject. So by simply moving forward and backwards, you could control the intensity of the flash. But the good thing about the flash is that it helps to add light towards the shadowy areas. And when you're backlighting in particular, sometimes the subjects' clothes and even their face will be darker than you would naturally want it to be, just because the sun is so strong and so intense and kind of overpowering the shot and the camera sensors. So with the flash, it helps to even it out so that it looks more like a nice picture taken in the shade.